A group that claims to be Jews and are not Jews but lie. Say they're not Jews. What's not clear about that? What's not clear about that? What's not clear about that? Everybody say they're not Jews. I see a lot of debating going on the internet right now, especially on X. If you're active on there, that's where news breaks first. And you will find actually a lot of Christians arguing about the Jews in Jerusalem. And there's a fundamental flaw to this argument that's occurring. One group is trying to argue, hey, these Jews are bad. And another group is trying to argue, well, even though they're bad, they're still the Jews and we have to bless them. But I want to present something to you today, and I hope that you'll share this sermon with your friends, and that is that they're not Jews. Jews are from the tribe of Judah, and you can also include the tribe of Benjamin. If you study it out, you will see that Jews means Judah, okay? Jesus is the line of David, tribe of Judah, therefore Jesus is ethnically a Jew. But something occurred prior to the first century, and it was called the Maccabean Revolution or Revolt. And you know this because you've been hearing my sermons, but if this is the first sermon you're hearing, there was a Maccabean Revolt. It's recorded in Josephus as well as other historians. It's very well known. And there was something called the Hasmonean dynasty that occurred as a result of the Maccabean Revolt. The Maccabean Revolt is why we have Hanukkah. It's because there was a miracle that occurred where the Lord kept the menorah in the temple lit while they were making new holy oil. And it was a miracle of God.
Listen with intelligence. Let me say this again. Listen with intelligence. Rich Tidwell from the He Is Greater podcast stated that the Hanukkah miracle is based on a single day's supply of oil lasting for multiple days. Now here's where things need to be examined carefully. He and others in many of the videos I've shared discussing the Synagogue of Satan are quick to argue that the people currently running Israel are not the true Jews, often referring to them as the Edomites or the Khazarians. They're quick to argue about who is not the true Israel. But then, in the same breath, they redefine who is, saying it's the church, or shifting the identity to other groups depending on the argument. The standard keeps moving. Anyone or anything but the Negroes. And that's the issue, because instead of staying grounded in the text, the definition gets adjusted to fit a narrative. Yet at the same time, they appeal to Jewish tradition when it supports their point. For example, Hanukkah. So let's focus in on his claim about Hanukkah.
The Maccabean Revolt is why we have Hanukkah. It's because there was a miracle that occurred where the Lord kept the menorah in the temple lit while they were making new holy oil. And it was a miracle of God.
1 Maccabees chapter 4 verse 49 to 54 says, "They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick, and the altar of burnt offerings, and of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table, and spread out the veils, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it. Even in that was it dedicated with songs and citherns and harps and cymbals." Here's the key question. What's missing from the text? There is no mention of any miracle where one day's oil lasted for 8 days. That detail simply isn't found in the earlier historical account. So where did this idea come from? It comes from later fables or tales disguised as tradition, specifically the Talmud. In Talmud Shabbat 21b, it states, "For when the Greeks entered the temple, they defiled all the oils therein, and when the Hasmonean dynasty prevailed against and defeated them, they made search and found only one cruse of oil which lay with the seal of the high priest, but which contained sufficient for one day's lighting only. Yet a miracle was wrought therein, and they lit the lamp therewith for 8 days. The following year these days were appointed a festival with the recital of Hallel and thanksgiving." That's where the story comes from. not from the original text, but from a modern lie.
Now, it's important to understand this part in history because the Hasmoneans forcefully converted the Edomites. The Edomites are the descendants of Esau. Esau married Canaanite women. The Edomites are well mixed with Canaanites. So that means that they are Canaanite blooded, even though their patriarch was a Shemite in the line of Shem and is the brother of Jacob. Edom is Canaanite blooded, okay? Arabic, Canaanite blooded, okay? All right, so as a result of the Edomites infiltrating Israel, they were forcefully converted. They wanted to possess Israel. And by the time of Jesus in the first century, King Herod is reigning in Jerusalem as the, quote, king of the Jews. Not really the king of the Jews, by the way. Jesus' cross said king of the Jews because Jesus was the actual king of the Jews, not Herod and not his descendants. But the Herodian dynasty were Edomites appointed by Rome to rule over Jerusalem. And I'm presenting to you today that they said in the first century, Antigonus, who was the last Hasmonean king, Antigonus said that Herod was not a true Jew. He was a half Jew and an Idumean, an Edomite. So it's very important to understand that very simple, easy to explain part of Christian history, that Edomites were reigning in Jerusalem during Jesus' first coming. And here's what I'm presenting to you today. That Edomites are ruling in Jerusalem at the second coming, and that they are already in Jerusalem ruling now. And if that's true, it'll be evidenced by history and by scripture. And my hope is in this sermon that you and other Christians will come to understand that the people reigning in Jerusalem today are the same ones reigning during Jesus' first coming. They are the Edomites that say they are Jews and are not, but lie. On X, no one is discussing who the synagogue of Satan is from Revelation chapter 2 and 3. No one's discussing who this group is. Now, you'll notice that we're not allowed to talk about ethnicities anymore. Have you noticed that? You're not, especially if you're European, you're not allowed to talk about ethnicities. Do not talk. But the problem is, Jesus talks about a group that claims to be Jews and are not Jews, but lie. Say they're not Jews. What's not clear about that? Go to Revelation chapter 3, verse 9. My hope is that more Christians will start to wake up to this. Behold, I will cause those of the synagogue of Satan. That's what this series is. This is the Synagogue of Satan series. I will cause those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. So literally the sermon title is based on the words of Jesus. They're not Jews. Jesus said this. Jesus is a Jew, tribe of Judah, line of David, genuine Messiah, saying there's a group that isn't Jews. King Herod, during Jesus' time, is one of them, which is why Jesus said, watch out for the leaven of the Pharisees. And we're going to prove today that the Pharisees were infiltrated by the Edomites. And watch out for the Herodians, the leaven of Herod, the Herodians, because they're Edomites. It's an infiltration. What happens to bread? What is leaven? It's a bacteria that if you leave it on a windowsill, leaven will actually, the bacteria will get into the bread, and as a result, it'll rise, okay? So what it means is leaven is an infiltration of a group. Josephus proves, which we're going to read today, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but Josephus proves that Herod is an Edomite, okay? The Pharisees were infiltrated, the Sadducees were infiltrated, and only the Essenes, who gave us the Dead Sea Scrolls, were strictly and purely tribe of Judah Jews. Isn't that interesting? So Revelation chapter 3, verse 9, behold, I will cause those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. I will make them come and bow down at your feet and make them know that I have loved you. Now they're going to hate that because Edomites are very arrogant. If you listen to Talmudic Judaism today, it's very arrogant, very prideful. They think Jesus is boiling in excrement in hell. That's very arrogant, very prideful, okay? But here's the point I want to make for Christian Zionists that maybe you got sent this sermon by somebody who wants to help you understand, okay? you must define who Revelation chapter 3, verse 9 is.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean,
Really?
maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained. And so I'm very confused as to why we don't do that. If you believe the theology that you've just explained to me.
Would we do that all over the world?
Well,
and everybody
this is the only country in the world that you've said has this covenant with God, that this people have a moral and legal right to the land.
What about
And
people
so-
who convert to Judaism? Would they have a right?
Well, you've just said
I mean,
that
there are
it's
converts
not
to Judaism, so
you just told
they
me,
can make Aliyah. They may not have
you've just
DNA.
told me that it doesn't matter. You told me moments ago, trying to keep track,
Okay.
that it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God or whether or not you practice Torah Judaism or Rabbinic Judaism, which is something else that I don't even know if we should, I don't even know what that means, but it doesn't matter whether you're, quote, a religious Jew or not. What matters is that you are part of the Jewish people to whom God gave this land that extends from the Nile to the Euphrates. And so if you believe that, wouldn't you want to know with a burning passion who those people are? And because of science, we can now know who those people are. So why aren't we finding out?
I guess you could propose a DNA test for everybody who comes here, everybody who lives here.
Because I don't see any Christian Zionists talking about this passage at all. They're just talking about, you gotta support the Jews, they're God's chosen people. Ted Cruz went so far, Senator Cruz went so far as to say, listen, that if you say Christ is king, that's an anti-Semitic statement now.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of it, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... You pull out the phone and use the...
It's in Genesis, but so you're quoting a Bible phrase, you don't have context for it and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian, I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on, you're a senator and now you're throwing out theology and I am a Christian and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And we're
What does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what, hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
So is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the descendants
God's
of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is.
Is that crazy? He said it. That's an anti-Semitic statement now. How deceived do you have to be to say that a statement, Christ is king, is now anti-Semitic? That is a man who has received millions of dollars from AIPAC and cannot be trusted. I'm actually thankful that the mask is off the Zionists. It's actually good, right? It's actually good to identify this synagogue that is serving the enemy. I don't see any Christian Zionists talking about this passage ever. If the synagogue of Satan, here's my question. If there's some small, obscure, inconsequential group, why are they invoked by Jesus speaking to the end times churches? Are you listening? Why are they presented to us right at the beginning of the book of Revelation so that we get acquainted with them right away? He brings them up twice in the first few chapters. And both times he says they say they're Jews and they're not, that they're actually a synagogue of Satan. Why are they invoked by Jesus repeatedly if they're just some small, obscure group? So what I'm presenting to you today, friends, is that no, they're not a small, obscure group. They're actually, read the New Testament, they're the Herodians. What does that mean? They're Edomites. They're spirit of Herod, spirit of the Antichrist. What did Herod do when Jesus was born? Slaughtered the innocents. What did Jeffrey Epstein put up at the Zorro Ranch? A 9x9 painting of King Herod's slaughter of the innocents. What do the Rothschilds, who Epstein represents, who have been involved in American politics, from my understanding, since the 1800s, and that's why things started to get worse over time, and then eventually they got really involved in the early 1900s, and now we've got Federal Reserve and all these other things, and there's a Zionist infiltration. We're totally occupied. Sorry, guys, I hate to break it to you. America is a vassal state. It's a shock for me, too. It's disappointing. I turned 38 this week. It was my birthday this week. And I am disappointed to realize, oh my goodness, America is a vassal state and has been for some time. John F. Kennedy threatened Israel, the prime minister, and he said, hey, we're going to oversee your nuclear program or you're not going to have one. And he said, you will seriously jeopardize, this is a quote, seriously jeopardize, end quote, the relationship between the U.S. and Israel if we don't oversee your nuclear program. He got shot a few months later. Publicly, ritualistically, in front of everybody, we run your country. Charlie Kirk starts speaking out about Zionism, being negative about it, shot in the throat, publicly, ritualistically, in front of all of us. Well, I'm not thankful for their deaths, but I am thankful that it has caused so many to question what's going on. And you've got people stating that even our president has converted to Judaism. Very possible. I think that's very likely. He definitely is compromised.
You just like me because my daughter happens to be Jewish, right? She has a great husband, Jared, and I'll tell you what, Ivanka could not be happier, and she's very proud. The only bad news, I can't get her on Saturday. I call and call. I can't speak to my daughter anymore on Saturday, but that's okay.
Oh, beautiful. That's beautiful.
I want to thank my Jewish daughter. I have a Jewish daughter. This wasn't in the plan, but I'm very glad it happened.
According to the source, Trump was pushed by his daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner to join the faith. At first, Trump resisted, stating it would threaten his base of evangelical Christian voters. However, he had a change of heart and officially converted in early 2017.
Should we do that on camera?
Absolutely. Sure. So to let you know, this is the birth certificate of Donald Trump's grandfather, born in 1869, close to Bad Dürkheim.
Right?
Yeah.
That's called
And
serious.
his Christian name was Friedrich.
Right? That's serious German.
Serious
right?
German.
That's serious. Bad Dürkheim is serious German. But I want to thank you very much for, first of all, I want to thank you for that. That's
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Fantastic. We'll put it up in a place of honor.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, let's see, to put it up there someplace. It's an honor to have you. As you know, the Chancellor just won a great election, very, very strong election. a very respected man. I can tell you we've been on the phone many times talking about some of the problems of the world outside of Germany. And it's very sad what's going on. We both feel that way. What's going on with Russia, Ukraine, and other things we talk about, but Russia, Ukraine in particular. I'd like to see it end, and maybe it'll end, but we get some news there'll be some fighting. Something happened a couple of days ago, and now they do a return, and here it goes. It's not good. He's unhappy about it. I'm unhappy about it. But I think eventually we're going to be successful in stopping the bloodshed. It's pure bloodshed. 5,000-6,000 young soldiers a week are being killed. You know that those numbers?
Yeah, we know the numbers.
They're staggering. They're staggering numbers. But Chancellor, I just want to congratulate you, and I want to welcome you to the Oval Office.
Thank you.
It's an Oval Office that's in very good shape. We like fixing things up and having them tippy-top like they have in Germany. They do that in Germany very much, and we do it here. We're having a very good run. I also had a great election, great win, won everything. Won the popular vote, all 7 swing states, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's pretty unusual to do that. And we have a great mandate from the people, and part of our mandate is we're going to have a great relationship with your country. The great one, Mark Leaven. And much more importantly, his much more brilliant wife. Where are you? There you are. Would you come on up here, both of you? Get up here. Get up here. Look, every Saturday, every Sunday, I'm forced to watch television to listen to this guy talk about how frickin' great I am. Because he does like Trump. There's no question about it. Come on up here, Mark. Get up here. Come on up. What a beautiful couple. Did you get lucky? If you weren't a genius, you wouldn't have a wife like this. Mark, say a couple of words. Come in, darling. And these people do like Israel.
Hold on. And he loves Israel too.
It's true.
2 seconds. 6 years ago, I was up here, and I said, "This is our first Jewish president." Now he's the first Jewish president to serve 2 not consecutive presidencies. We thank you for everything.
They're not Jews. In the 2020 study, The Genomic History of the Bronze Age Southern Levant, researchers analyzed the DNA from 93 ancient individuals from across the Levant, which, by the way, I found out none of these were First and Second Temple period Jewish grave sites. They are all grave sites from other places in the Levant, okay? Ashkelon and elsewhere. Okay, 93 ancient individuals from across the Levant, and compared the remains with that of 1,663 modern individuals, majority of them Ashkenazis, but they did do some Arabs as well. The conclusion, modern Ashkenazi populations are descendants of the ancient Canaanites. Jerusalem Post headlined this study, quote, "Modern Jews and Arabs retain more than half their ancestry from Bronze Age Canaanites."
Stranger danger! Stranger danger! Stranger danger! Stranger danger!
Now, I want to shut the door completely on the claim that the Khazarian hypothesis has not been proven, using the words and findings of Ashkenazi Jewish geneticist Aaron Elhake. Also, I want to address the scholars cited in this episode who claim that there is no connection between the Ashkenazi Jews and the Khazarians. Let's examine their statement in light of the evidence. In Aaron Elhake's publication titled Highlight Out of Khazarian, Evidence for a Jewish Genome Lacking, he states, Aaron Elhake, a geneticist at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, thinks so. In a recently published study in Genome Biology Evolution, he is calling for a rewrite of commonly held assumptions about Jewish ancestry. Instead of being primarily the descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel, present-day Jewish populations are, finds Elhake, primarily the children of a Turkish people who lived in what is now Russia, north of Georgia, east of Ukraine. this civilization, the Khazars, converted from tribal religions to Judaism between the 7th and 9th centuries. The controversy cut into El-Haik's work runs deep, far past the lab bench. Among some circles, his conclusions are bound to be unpopular. This is the first scientific paper to prove the Khazarian hypothesis and reject the Rhineland hypothesis, he says, and with it about 40 years of research. Although his findings will not be welcome in all circles, El-Haik's interest is more medical than political. All I want is to help my colleagues who are studying genetic disorders, he says. I hope this work will open up a new era of genetic studies where population stratification will be used more correctly. He goes on to say in this publication, previous studies had, for example, combined the question of similarity among and between Jewish populations and the question of ancestry and relatedness to non-Jewish populations. El-Haik viewed these questions separately. Jewish communities are less homogeneous than is popularly thought, he says, with Jewish communities along the former Khazarian border showing the most heterogeneity. His second question centered on ancestry. When comparing Jewish communities to their non-Jewish neighbors, Caucasus or Levant, in other words, Middle Eastern populations, which is closest to Jews? All Eurasian Jewish communities are closer to Caucasus population, he writes, with Central European Jews closer to Italian non-Jews as the exception. Not one of the 8 evaluated Jewish populations were closer to the Levant populations. See, it wasn't until the late 1980s and the early 1990s that haplogroup R, particularly its subclades like R1A and R1B, along with haplogroup E, were recognized in genetic studies. This means that DNA analysis as a method of identification is fairly new. Before this technology, what methodology was used to determine who was who in terms of an ancient Israelite, more specifically, Black Jews?
Can you tell us a little bit about the Sephardic Jews and how they were scattered because they went west?
I sure can.
Because the reason why I want to is because a lot of them, and a lot of people don't know this, are in the Caribbean.
They are.
In the islands.
And you're one of them. I know that.
One of them.
I know that.
Because, you know, a lot of folk don't know that those roots of them, the first batches of slaves that came to Jamaica, they were the Sephardic Jews. It's documented.
And they're all over the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and even the South Central United States.
But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites or you want to be Jews?
You can convert to Judaism. You can't convert to a blood family. You cannot convert to a race. Judaism is a religion. That's all it is.
Their bones were discovered in Kafseh caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel at the sites of Kafseh and Shul show us that there were modern humans outside of Africa.
The present occupiers of Jerusalem are not permitting tests to be done on First and Second Temple period Jewish grave sites. I think if there's anything we should demand, obviously we want pedophiles hung publicly, but I'm talking about on the biblical archaeological side of things, We should demand first and second temple period so we can stop calling people Jews that are not. If we extract DNA from the first and second temple period Jewish graves, that will tell us who they were. And I don't mean one grave site, I mean lots, so that we have a good, solid proof of who they were.
What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.